It is day 19 of the Alec Murdaugh murder trial. It featured more details today about the angles and patterns of the shots fired in the murders of Maggie and Paul Murdaugh.
Our Greg Adeline has been following the proceedings today. Greg, live outside the Colleton County Courthouse. Greg, some interesting testimony today. What did we learn?
Well, Billie Jean and Dondi, it was certainly detailed when it came to some of the details on some of those shots that were fired, the angles, the trajectories. We'll get to that in a minute, but I want to get you up to speed on what's happening in the courtroom right now. A phone call that is very revealing in regard to the roadside shooting. Alec Murdaugh shot on the side of the road in an attempted suicide for hire plot that was basically foiled and that he admitted to investigators. A phone call playing right now during the testimony of Ryan Kelly, a SLED senior special agent who investigated that case. All of that evidence now coming into the trial. And of course, prosecutors are trying to prove that Alec Murdaugh has a pattern, perhaps, of lying to law enforcement and concocting schemes in order to cover for financial crimes. We'll have that in detail. Nick Neville listening to that testimony right now. We're putting together a report on all that was said in that phone call. It is revealing because we have never heard it before, but you'll hear it at 5. But I want to get back to what we talked to about with the some of the forensic analysis on the scene at Moselle from this expert here, an expert who was able to basically trace the trajectories of some of these bullets. We're talking about Kenneth Kenzie taking the stand today. He testified that Paul's arms were down when he was shot. Backing up Dr. Reamer, you'll remember her a couple of days ago, who testified that neither Maggie nor Paul had defensive wounds, suggesting perhaps a surprise attack or a familiarity with the shooter. Kenzie testifying that both were shot at relatively close range, and that in his expert opinion, he said that the evidence shows that the shotgun blasts that killed Paul were shot upwards, that they were from another person, that this was not a murder-suicide, as the defense has seemed to suggest at times during their cross-examination. But Kenzie said also that a tread from an ATV tire was imprinted on Maggie Murdaugh's calf. The tire, he said, belonged to an ATV that was in close proximity to Maggie Murdaugh's body, and that it either came from that tire or a tire with similar characteristics. Dick Harpootlian trying to show that Murdaugh was too tall and that the angle of the shot that killed Paul really doesn't match what Kenzie was testifying to. It's also worth noting that Kenzie and Harpootlian have a little bit of a history, as Harpootlian has used Kenzie as a witness in other cases. But today, despite Harpootlian's best efforts in some ways, Kenzie was undeterred and unshaken from the stand, standing by his findings about the angles of the shots. Take a listen.
A couple things real quick. You were contacted by SLED to do a review of this case, is that correct?
Yes, sir, it was.
And were you told any particular conclusions to come to, or did you do a fresh review and then arrive at your own conclusions of your own independent judgment?
Every conclusion I came to was in spite of any pre-existing conclusions. I made my own conclusions.
Well, back out here live, you could say that Kenzie was a very effective witness because he really had kind of this down-home manner in which he was able to easily explain his findings to that jury. The dowel stick that he's using, showing clear trajectories of where the shots came from and where they hit the victims in this case. And really, most importantly, he was easy for the jury to follow. And of course, we will have much more from inside that courtroom. Some dramatic testimony taking place right now with SLED Special Agent Ryan Kelly talking about that roadside shooting. We will have complete coverage coming up for you on your news at 5. But for now, we're live outside the Colleton County Courthouse. I'm Greg Adeline, WIS News 10.